Can you hear me? Oh, oh.
Shapur, please come to the stage area. Paging Shapur. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 4 of NAB in the Sony booth of NAB 2018. We're here at the professional camcorder section of the booth, the small stage to the right. We're about to start our first presentation of the day, the introduction of the new PXW FS5 M2 by Shapur Nasrati. Take it away, Shapur.
Thank you, Tom. Welcome, everybody. It is the last day. And woohoo, there we go. So, we had a blast this NAB. Welcome to Sony NAB 2018. We had a lots of great, exciting products this year. That beautiful screen in the back, I've been looking at it for 4 days, and I fell in love with it. If I only had a few $1,000,000 to take that home. Uh, so, welcome to Pro Camcorder area. We are going to talk about one of the exciting announcements that we had this year, our FS5 Mark II. FS5 and generally the FS family, it's been one of our best-selling Pro camcorders. It's been received very well in the market for the past couple of years. Thank you for being a loyal customer and looking at these cameras, but we thought, what are we going to do for you guys based on the feedback and improve upon the same great camera with the very well ergonomic and a small size, compact size that was designed and received in the market. Uh, what we did is we went back to the drawing board and we learned from the color science technology that we have with Venice, one of the beautiful flagship cameras, and you're seeing right behind you that amazing picture that was shot in Venice, Italy with Venice camera. So It is not exactly Venice. That's a beautiful camera that we shot over there, but we learned from the same technology that the color science they had in there, and we retweaked the FS5 sensor to have more of the cinematic, natural cinematic skin tone look right out of the box with the 709 picture profile 1 of the camera. So we take the guesswork out of it. Basically, out of the box, you have more of that appealing look available to you guys. The other thing that we did is FS5 at this price point and size, it's one of the best high frame rate cameras because lots of people, we don't talk about this often. You can do 120 frame in 4K 12-bit raw quality externally on an NMOS or convergence design recorder, an external recorder. It's a 4-second burst for 4K 120, but it's still, for this price point of the camera, I think it's amazing. You can also do 240 frame continuous externally at 12-bit raw quality again, externally on a recorder. Internally, you could do 120 frame continuous, no limitation, 240 XAVC on board, 8-second burst. That's about 1.5 minutes of a slow motion in 24p. So that's still plenty and beautiful. Up to 240 full HD, full 1920, 1080. Any of the frame rates I just mentioned, they're all full resolution. There is no sensor cropping. There is no compromise in the resolution of the quality. And then if you can little compromise on the resolution, you can even go 480 and 960 internally on the camera. So all of that, looking at it from 960, 480, 240 internally, as well as 120 continuous internally, and the 4K 12-bit raw quality externally, it will make it very powerful high-speed camera at this price point. So again, to kind of like sum up, those are all the frame rates that you could do. Obviously, you can do 4K 60p as well with an external recorder externally, because now the raw license and the 120 frame HFR license is included in FS5 Mark II. So again, what didn't we do different or change? Why do you want to change something that works and it's been received very well with the customers? One of the things that, first of all, we don't talk very often with lots of people in the market, and we should talk about it a little bit more, it's the Sony quality. We are one of the few manufacturers that manufacture everything from the lens all the way to the end of the camera. In fact, all the way to your living room. And we have everything covered at Sony. We are a lens manufacturer. We are a sensor manufacturer. Matter of fact, we're the largest sensor manufacturer in the world. You probably have some device, even if it's not Sony, in your pocket or hanging around your neck or in your living room or in your business that they're not Sony brand, but they use Sony sensor. And we have the best of the best for ourselves. So the other thing is the quality that we put and the investment we make on every one of these cameras. We've made our cameras, all the professional cameras, for several years now from the magnesium titanium. This is the stuff they make special out of. It makes it much, much lighter. It makes it a lot more durable for professional use. There are lots of cameras out there that use aluminum, which is too heavy. They use plastic, not durable for professional use. It's a consumer use, but these are built from ground up for professional use. So some of the other stuff that it's amazing, and we keep the same with this camera, it's an alpha lens mount system. The E-mount, it's an amazing thing that we started a few years ago in some of our cameras, because it takes the limitation of what kind of glass you can use from your worrying about what camera, what glass you have. We understand the cameras come and go. There are different cameras. The lens is the biggest investment for you. Although we have about 68 beautiful E-mount lenses that can go directly on the cameras. But the advantage of alpha system lenses and E-mount lenses are that you can really adapt it to any and every kind of glass you want in the market. You can use cinema lenses, you could use Canon and Nikon lenses, you could use broadcast 2/3 inch lenses, and the adapters are widely available. Because in fact, it's only 18mm flange depth, you can easily adapt it to anything in the market. The XAVC codec, still we believe is a great balance between the quality and file size to be able to record on an affordable media, SDXC card. And you can still record 4K 30p onto the cards, and as I mentioned, with the RAW, you can externally go as far as even 4K DCI, 60p continuous. Again, the camera comes out of the box with a viewfinder, grip. You can even purchase it with a bundle lens. But as you see in my hand, this is a fully functional camera with a pancake lens, which weighs about less than 2 pounds, less than a kilogram, that you can basically mount it on drones, gimbals, a lot of different tight places that it's not possible to put a bigger camera, but this is a very powerful camera that you can do everything with it based on being modular, and you can configure it different ways. Sensors, I did talk about it already. We are one of the largest sensor manufacturers. Matter of fact, if you were here in CES this past couple of months, they showed amazing things, the things that sensors can do and see more than what our eyes can see, and it's going to be used in the future. Car technologies, auto-drive cars, and all kind of things. But what the point I'm trying to make is, it sounds like that farmers commercial. We know a thing or two about sensors, making sensors, because the number of things, more than several hundred millions of sensors we make for ourselves and everybody every year. We are proud of our core technologies and what we can do in the imaging devices in the world. Variable ND filter was something that was created a few years ago with handy camcorders and then trickled down to FS5, FS7 Mark II, and now continues on FS5 Mark II. It opens up the door to a lot of creative things that you can do. Let's say you wanted to go indoor to outdoor, and seamlessly you can change your ND, or you can dial it in variably, incrementally from quarter ND all the way to 1/128 ND. That's from 2 to 7 stop, or you can have your aperture wide open and do depth of field pool. Just every time I talk to a customer, the doors that it's open for creativity that they can do using that variable ND, it's just endless. Every day I hear something new, and people love this feature, so we kept continuing that on FS5 Mark II as well. So HLG, we are doing HLG with the FS5 and a lot of our handy camcorder. Matter of fact, if you look at the end of this module, we have 2 TVs side by side showing the content shot with HLG and HLG up on the monitor next to it. So obviously we do have the HDR workflow as an S-Log3, S-Gamma 3, and post processing and grading in a post that would give you the best result and best flexibility. But this is for somebody that doesn't have the time or budget to do color grading later. You want something fast and ready to go in the camera. So we add a hybrid log gamma. We had a number of presentations here yesterday that they went more in depth into that from some of our industry leader shooters, not Sony employees. So I recommend you guys can go back to YouTube and watch all of that stuff. But what it's doing is basically adding a hybrid log gamma into the video. So it does not change your workflow. You still shoot and edit the same, and you can view it on an HLG capable monitor, or you can export to YouTube and other platforms that they can take HLG. A matter of fact, if you bought any TV since last year at Best Buy or any other places, one of the settings in the TVs, HDR TVs, are HLG. HLG was developed by BBC for traditional broadcast HDR. But now we call it instant HDR, and we have that hybrid lock gamma curve into the camera to make the guesswork out of it for lots of our users that they have to be on the go and create HDR content. So that's still available in this, as well as number of cameras that we have on that counter from our professional camcorder division. Of course, if you do have the time and budget to do color grading, you can still do S-Log2 and S-Log3 for more precise and more flexibility of the HDR delivery. These are the internal recordings. So the internal recording of FS5 and FS7 has not changed. It's very similar, beside obviously the color science. If you look at this monitor to the right of me, kind of like go over that comparison between the look, the natural look out of the camera, but the internal recording is still XAVC. As I mentioned, we feel it's a great balance between the quality and the file size that you can record on an SD card manually. You can still buy or purchase a MPEG license key if you are looking for a legacy format, especially lots of broadcasters want that. That's available as an option, but the raw and the high frame rate, it's going to be included in the FS5 Mark II, pre-installed from factory. The camera, the FS5 Mark II, will be available June, and between now and then, we still have a couple of shows in the industry. I'm sure we're going to see most of you at other shows as well, but the camera will start shipping in mass quantity in June. Looking forward for you guys to see it, ask more questions, and we're here, remember, to listen to you guys and develop something based on your feedback for the future cameras. That's what we do. We are one of the largest camera manufacturers in the world, and we're going to continue doing that, listening to you guys. Thank you so much. Look at every cameras that we have here on both modules on the left side and right. Look at the beautiful sealed screen in your back. There's plenty of experts on the booth that can answer any questions you guys have. Thank you.
Testing one. Yep.
Probably because I had the wrong mic on.
Good? Still morning, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Yes, all of you out there in NAB land. So welcome to the Sony booth in NAB 2018. This is the stage at the professional camcorder section of the Sony booth. And we're about to start our last presentation of the day. You know what they save the best for last. And speaking of the best, often associated with Sony is a brand new set of camcorders that I'm about to introduce to you. The new PXW Z280 and the PXW Z190. Two brand new 3-chip 4K 60p camcorders. So let's get started. Oh, and by the way, if you have any questions, you can either answer those at the end or you can ask me up front, and then I'll repeat that question so the rest of the world. This is actually being streamed live on YouTube. So, in a sense, I'm world famous. Okay, so let's start off with the PXW Z280. Again, these two camcorders are the world's first 3-chip 4K 60p camcorder. So up until this show, 4K camcorders are those single chip style, typically a large sensor. We've got some fantastic cameras in that area. We have the PXW FS7 series, the FS5 series, and of course, our very famous F5 and 55, 65, and the brand new Venice, which is producing some beautiful imagery for our 8K by 4K crystal LED display. That's right behind you. But single sensor images, they give you that certain look, that shallow depth of field look. And although it's really a beautiful image, and it allows you to be very creative in the way you tell a story, it's not always the tool that you want to use. Sometimes you want to have that extra depth of field. What about sports? Can you imagine trying to follow a running back as he cuts in and out of the hole and trying to keep them in focus with a single chip with shallow depth of field? You know, leave that for the NFL film guys, the experts. Or how about news or event video? There's plenty other areas where you want to have that extra depth of field. So that's where a camera like the Z280 comes in. So if it looks familiar, and it should, Sony's had a line of cameras for the last decade or so, our PMW EX1, EX1R, PMW 300, all of those up until the PXW X200 that have that 3-chip half-inch sensor. And that's been a fantastic line of cameras for us. In fact, at one point in time, the EX1 was the most popular camera that Sony ever made. And that was only surpassed recently by the FS7. So, we took this same basic model and turned it into a 4K camcorder. So now you've got the 3 half-inch sensors, you got that beautiful color reproduction, you've got 4K 60p resolution, so you've got that motion for sports, that 60p motion, and you've got that depth of field that you need. And the amazing part is, in HD, this camcorder actually produces better specifications than the previous model. So this is a 4K camcorder that's got a higher signal to noise than our previous HD model, and also slightly better sensitivity. So we'll go through these key points. This is kind of like your giant overview. We're not going to get into the nitty-gritty details and every little menu section, but we do have a couple of camcorders around the corner on the camera set and a couple more down on the counter. So after this presentation, feel free to go talk to your Sony reps and the amazing students that are assisting us throughout this show, and they'll get you those fine details. So again, just to reiterate, this is a 4K 3-chip camera, 3 half-inch CMOS sensors. Now, Sony has an amazing technology called XMOR, and that XMOR technology still exists in this camera. So XMOR is a way where we do our A to D conversion right at the chip. So we avoid any analog signals passing through circuitry where they can be contaminated and actually add more noise to the video image. So we start off with that, and then we add the fact that it's 4K resolution. 10-bit 422, using a number of different codecs, which we'll get to. Now this lens, I love this lens. I've been showing these cameras, the EX line of cameras, and now this PXW line of cameras for the last decade. I've been with Sony for 18 years. And this lens is incredible. It's a 17 by lens, so it's a little longer than the EX1 series lenses were. It was voice of customer. We needed to make the lens a little longer. But the way this lens functions as a camcorder, it's like you're holding that ENG style camera. So you've got the full-size ring for iris. You've got a full-size ring for the zoom that works in both a manual and automatic mode. So when I pull that ring back so I can see this orange ring, we're in a full manual mode, and there's a little window here that shows you your focus points. So if I know my subject is 12 feet away, I can set that for 12 feet or near about the 12 to 15 foot mark, and I'm going to be right there. I just need to tweak my focus. You can't say that about a lot of camcorders. They have that ring that just spins around perpetually, which this one will do in that auto/manual mode, but you really want to just see that orange ring and have that full manual control. Also, on top of having the servo zoom, this is a fully manual mechanical zoom. So, especially in that fast-moving action where sports and news and everything else, you want to be able to get in there and get that snap zoom real fast. It's a full mechanical zoom, so you're going to get in there without any delays. Beautiful, beautiful lens. I love it. So we've added face detection. I know you're all professionals and you love to do your manual focus, but there are those occasions when you want to have the camera do some of the work for you. Maybe you're walking backwards, you're just trying to keep track of these wires that you don't want to trip on, or you're just doing so many other things. Let the camera take over, and it's got a new feature that actually lets you register the faces. So now think about it, if you're doing an event video and you've got a bride and groom and they're in this one shot and then they leave the shot, when they come walking back in, the camera's going to be able to recognize them because you've registered their faces. It's really amazing. Electronic variable ND. So all throughout the show we've been having presentations about this feature. It is a Sony only feature and it's really quite remarkable. We drop in an LCD in front of as our ND filter, and we're able to variably change that, and the best part is no color shift, right? So there's those screw-on type ND filters you can twist. Problem with those, you get a lot of color shift. and you have to have it just for that camera, and if you've changed lenses and everything else. So here, on our FS7M2, on our FS5, previous models, the PXWX 160 and 180, we had this feature. So this is not brand new technology, but it's still amazing Sony-only technology. So what this allows you to do is choose your aperture, and then when you're shooting outdoors and you have that jump between ND1 and ND2, and you have to make that compromise, like I really wanted to shoot at this aperture so I can get that certain depth of field look, whatever that might be. Now I don't have to worry about that. I simply flip this switch over to variable, and now use this dial over here, and I can dial anywhere from 2 to 7 stops of ND into that image. Additionally, there is an auto ND function. With the auto ND function, I put the auto ND on. No matter what my aperture is, the exposure is going to adjust automatically. Think of those times where you're shooting outdoors and it's a partly sunny, partly cloudy day. It's like one of those beautiful days. There's no humidity, the sun's out, everybody's having a good time. But as a shooter, you're like, it's like clouds drift in, gotta open up the iris, clouds drift out, and then you're worrying about the white balance on top of that. With auto ND, it's going to adjust that for you. You keep the iris at the aperture you want to set it at. There's also something called a depth of field pull, and although it won't be quite as dramatic with half-inch sensors, with cameras like the FS7 and FS5, you have a closed aperture you're shooting at now. You have your subject in the foreground in focus, your subject in the background in focus, and as I open up to get that shallow depth of field, and I could still do that from here, I just do it from a further distance and zoom in to create that depth. As I open up my aperture, I'm decreasing my depth of field, throwing the background out of focus. That's called a depth of field pull. So that's a nice creative way to bring focus or bring attention to your subject in the foreground. HLG and BT 2020. So HDR has been a really big thing the last couple of years, especially at NAB. Amazing footage behind you, a lot of that's in HDR, but not everybody knows how to grade HDR. So you shoot an S-Log, and then you go through that grading process. This camera does have S-Log, by the way, but for those folks that don't have that experience to grade for HDR, simply set the camera to shoot HLG. There's a number of different levels. HLG 1, 2, and 3. There's one for bright sunny days. There's another one that's better or more effective in low light. You set it to that, you just shoot like you would shoot your regular video. You're gonna probably get used to being able to get more highlights in that scene than you normally would, so you might have to do a little experimenting when you shoot, but once you shot and you go into the editing room, you're not needing to do anything differently. Now when you view it, you do need to view it on a monitor or display that does have that lookup table, that adjustment in the monitor to say, okay, I'm using HLG, here's the image I'm going to get. And you can see the HLG images on the far left monitor at the end of this counter over here. So more key points, our network functions, we have a plethora of them. Like that word, plethora? Just kind of came to my mind right there. So we have an app that you can use on your cell phone, Android or iOS. You can use it on a tablet as well. It's called Content Browser Mobile. It's a pretty remarkable app. It does everything from lock up wireless time code link, like on our Z90 cameras that are sitting over there, and the NX80, you can lock up to 5 cameras wirelessly with time code. You do need the license key to do that. But in this case, we're using the app to clip trim, so trim your clips, and transfer those clips to another location. You can do FTP file transfer while you're recording. Of course, you have to wait for that recorded file to close before that one can be sent, but all the previous clips can all be being sent out while you're actually still recording. MPEG-2 streaming, and of course remote control using the same app. I simply go to the control section after I've connected to my camera using the Wi-Fi that's built in, and I have control now of zoom, focus, iris, white balance. I even see an image on the display, and I can see everything that I'm doing. Record, start, stop, you're all good to go. So some of the network functions, and you can get more details over here in our broadcast workflow and media solutions area. We're interfacing with XDCam Air, which is a cloud-based design for news, ENG applications, anything live. It's not limited to news. And here, in this case, we're able to stream high-quality QoS. QoS is quality of service, so it compensates for lost packets so that you maintain image integrity. So we've got that there where we can go to XDCam Air or our PWS 110 RX1 server, which you'll see on the next page. Remote control from that station can actually reach into the camera and do the same types of controls that I could do with the phone locally, and of course, transfer those clips back as well. Now we're doing that not only with a single link, but now we've got dual link connectivity. So this is something brand new from Sony. We know how important it is to be reliable and to have the best performance in your streaming. So we created this dual link connectivity. It actually allows you to use 2 cellular modems. So that's doubling your performance and doubling your reliability. Here's a look at the PWS 110 RX1 receiver, and then you go, or XDCam Air, and then you go on air from there. And of course, a wealth of recording formats. I took the liberty of highlighting the 4K segment because that's really what this camera is all about. Although, like I said before, beautiful, beautiful HD images come from this camera. So we've got all the formats you're looking for in a camcorder. XAVC-I for those who like to color grade and use a lot of effects. XAVC-L for those that want to have longer recording times or save on storage. And then of course the traditional MPEG codecs as well, keeping your legacy codecs available for you. You can see with the XAVC-I we're at 10-bit 422, so you've got the highest quality video possible. Additionally, we're able to record both 4K and HD simultaneously. Yes, I said both at the same time. So what you do here is you use the 4K using your XAVC Intra or Long Op, and then you're getting your HD onto your MPEG-2. That's all onto the same card at the same time. And oh, by the way, proxy video can also be recorded up to 9 megabits per second while you're doing all that. So 3 recordings in one camera, pretty remarkable. As far as audio goes, we've actually enhanced the capabilities of this line. So this camera has 4 independent channels of audio recording. Now audio can come from the 2 XLRs here on the front of the camera, or our UWP-D series has a hot shoe interface. It's called our MI shoe. So you can actually power the receiver and bring in audio through that MI shoe. So there's your 4 channels with 4 independent pods for adjustment. 12G, so 12G this year, it's a big deal. You know, we've got the 1.5 and the 3 gig as well, but keeping your camera future-proof with all these new products coming out with a 12G interface, we're sort of keeping up with the Joneses here and giving you 12G as well. I mentioned the MI shoe. We actually have 2 MI shoes on this camera. So we took feedback from our customers after having this MI shoe out there for quite a while. And a lot of customers, they love the interface for the audio, but it's on the front of the camera. It's like, where do I put my light? So we listened. So now the light goes on the front MI shoe, and that allows you to trigger the light to come on and off as you do your recordings. You're still going to want to power the light separately using its own battery, but then the MI shoe on the back interfaces with your single or dual channel wireless receiver, allowing you to get your total of 4 channels into the camera. A list of the entire set of interfaces. The one thing I didn't mention, in addition to the Wi-Fi and LTE connections we can do over a network, we have a hardwired Ethernet connection as well to ensure even more reliability. Okay, onto the PXWZ90. So, yeah, I guess you could call this camera the little cousin, the little brother, little sister, depending on how you want to do it. It is the 1/3 inch version of the 4K 60p line. So this is two new cameras, the line starting out with, and this is 4K, 3-chip, 1/3 inch, capable of 60p 4K recordings. It does have the face detection, like the Z280. The lens is a little bit different, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. We'll start off with the functional differences. So, Z280 on the left, Z190 on the right. Immediately we see there's a difference in the sensor size, 1/3 inch over here. The lens is a little bit different. You could just say it's a 25 times zoom. That's a pretty long zoom to have. This lens has been used in some other cameras and people love it. They love the length of having 25 times. You can get all the way in the front of the church from the back if you need to. It does have some manual function, so even though it doesn't say full manual, it's a manual focus. It's got a full manual ring. It's got a manual iris, the full-size ring. What it doesn't have is that fully mechanical zoom, so I can't do those hard, fast snap zooms. It's going to be more of an electronic feel to that. So slight difference there. I talked about it earlier, the HLG in both cameras, but S-Log being only on the Z280. Both cameras have an amazing OLED eyepiece viewfinder on the rear. So in those instances where there's too much sunlight to use your LCD, the OLED technology helps make focusing so much easier. Your media, what you record to, S/S on this side, SD cards for the Z190. Of course, you can use adapters depending on the codec that you're using to go to either XQD or SD cards. As far as codecs go, XAVC long for the Z190, and of course, as I mentioned earlier, both L and I available on the Z280. 3G only for the Z190, and of course 1.5 3G and 12G for the Z280. Genlock on the Z280, and networking as well as the MPEG codec is available on the Z190, but it is available through a license. It's one of those things where I kind of feel like this market of camera, not everybody's going to be doing wireless, not everybody's going to be doing the MPEG codec, so why charge you for it if you're not going to use it? In terms of the sensor, looks like the same picture, but the sensors are a little bit smaller. They're 3-chip, 1/3 inch type, again, capable of 60p at 4K. In HD, we're 422 10-bit. In 4K, it is going to be an 8-bit 420. A little bit more about the lens. You can see we start off at 28.8 and go all the way out to 720 millimeters. That's quite a range for a lens. And oh, by the way, the camera's still pretty light, so even with that long lens on there, still very easy to handle that camera. Formats, you can see there's a slight reduction in the native formats. We do know that we can add the MPEG through the license key. And again, just to mention, it is 8-bit 420 when you're in 4K at 60p. Interfaces, we do have the Ethernet jack here. Of course, that, in order to utilize that, you do need the network license. And of course, we are not including anything other than 3G as the interface with the SDI. Just a more detailed look at the available licenses. So the MPEG upgrade here. Look, MPEG's a great codec, but the reality is XAVC is so much more efficient, and you really want to take advantage of that. XAVC-L, that's on this camera, it's a long GOP codec, just like MPEG HD, but it's a, like I said, in HD, a 422 10-bit, so why cheat yourself anyway? The network upgrade license here includes the interface with the RJ45 connector and all the other remote control and streaming functions that we talked about earlier. As far as the schedule goes, The Z280 is available at the end of June timeframe. A little bit longer for the Z190. That's going to be around September. And then both cameras will have a version 2 firmware upgrade available right around December. Last page here is our specification page. Kind of like an eye chart here. If you need to move closer, feel free to do that. The one thing we did do here on this chart is we added the PXW X200 just so you could see a basic comparison between the brand new Z280 and the previous model of the X200. So you'll see some minor differences and also some major differences. So that's our presentation for today. I appreciate your time here. Thanks for stopping by the Sony booth. And NAB 2018, we're nearing the end, so there's lots more to see throughout the booth. Enjoy yourselves. Have a great day.